Okay, good evening, everybody, and welcome to this BAA Wednesday webinar. This evening, we've got Eric Walker to talk to us about all things all sky. So Eric is an amateur astronomer and an astrophotographer, and you're a STEM ambassador as well, which I think is a very worthy thing to be doing. So going out and encouraging people to get interested in science, tech, engineering, and maths. So Eric lives up in the north of Scotland, in the Highlands, in Conon Bridge, which isn't far from Dingwall, I think, which good haggises come from, I remember when I was up.
Cool, yeah.
So not far from Inverness, and has, I think, enviably dark skies compared to the kind of skies that a lot of us have down in the southeast of England. And he's got an observatory at home, which he used for solar and dark sky observing. And the thing I noticed that was really interesting, it says you retired from whiskey making in 2015. So that sounds like an interesting job.
Yeah. 36 years in the industry I had, so yeah.
Did you get free samples?
I was involved in the quality assessment, I would say.
Right. Oh, well, that doesn't sound like a bad job at all.
Oh, it was lovely.
Okay, Eric, so thanks very much for joining us tonight. We're really looking forward to your talk. So over to you now. As far as questions is concerned, people can type in questions in the Zoom chat or on YouTube. So this is being broadcast on YouTube. I'll collect them together and present them to Eric at the end. Plan is that we'll start the Q&A sometime around 7:45, 7:50, something like that. Okay, Eric, so thanks very much.
Okay, right. Well, I'll just share my screen, and Nick, if you could just let me know whether the thing has come up.
I will do.
Really, that would relax me a bit.
Yeah. It's beginning to appear. There we go. Yeah, that's there. So that's full screen. We can see your title slide.
Okay, that's excellent. Okay, well, thank you very much to the BAA for inviting me to chat to you tonight. This all started with it was an email. We have a fellow called Dennis Baczynski who lives up here, and he takes wonderful pictures of comets and meteors and very small objects in the night sky. And there's a little email group he has, and it was a fireball or something she shared with us, and I went, oh, I think I captured that on my all sky camera. And of course, your new president, David, was on that list, and he went, oh, you have an all sky camera, you can do a talk for us. That would be very good. So anyway, that was how it all came about, and I'm very pleased to be here and do my presentation. I'm chair of Highlands Astronomical Society, and here's all the social media ways of getting in touch with us. I could read out all these things, but I'm not going to. If you replay the or go into the YouTube thing later, if you just put your smart device over the QR codes, that will take you straight to the various social media that we use. You're very welcome to have a look at what we do. We are an amateur astronomy club. We have about 65 members currently. We operate an observatory right next to Culloden battlefield, and as Mick said, we have very, very good dark skies. Unfortunately, we also get a bit of cloud, but I think that's just par for the UK. This is where we are. We are right up here, right in the north, right on the Moray Firth. There's Inverness. Now that little telescope there is actually at my observatory in my house. Highlands Astronomical Society is at Culloden, just here, just where my cursor is. But we're well far north, so we not only get dark skies, but we get wonderful northern lights, Aurora Borealis. And of course, with the sun becoming much more active in solar cycle 25, we have had a fair few good displays this last few months, and I'm going to show you some of those tonight as well. We also get extremely light skies in the summer. We get no darkness at all. Twilight's the best we get, but we also are favoured with noctilucent clouds, which we also hunt in the June, July, August months. So we're pretty fortunate up here. We have a monthly meeting just like the BAA does. We have main speakers, invited speakers, club speakers. We also do our club news. We always set targets for the month, And we have many, many astrophotographers, members of our club and other clubs, and we all share our pictures. And this has kept us going throughout the COVID days where we've not been able to get together, but we've all been able to share our pictures online, and that's been very, very successful, I'd say. We have a practical observing program normally. That has gone by the by, I would have to say, but we're looking to start that immediately in March. And we do pop-up observatories as well as having our own observatory. We turn up on beaches and festivals and all kinds of things. You'll see a picture in a minute. We have, as I say, a very, very active astrophotography group, and I'm not the only STEM ambassador. I think there's 4 or 5 of us in the club, and we go out to schools and colleges and encourage young people to take a serious interest in STEM subjects. And we do a lot of public outreach. This is us. This is our observatory at Culloden. 14-inch telescope, nice warm room. This is outside it. When there's no wind at Culloden, you can take your scopes outside the pound, but it's quite often windy on there. This is Rosemarkie Beach, where we set up our solar pop-ups in the summer. And this was Belladrum Festival, where we set up our solar scopes on a club display, just to kind of advertise ourselves. So good club, really good club, friendly club, and we have missed the face-to-face. We are really looking forward to getting back to face-to-face in the next few weeks and months. This is my observatory, my back garden. I've got 1.8 meter dome. I've got pretty good skies, certainly to the south and west of me, so it's pretty good, and the north. That's my big scope. At other times, there's all kinds of things that are attached to this. How on earth the mounts takes it, but it does. And I do a lot of astrophotography, as Nick said. Anyway, back to tonight. What is the story tonight? It's why build an all-sky camera at all, and why did I, in particular, build one? I'm going to take you through the general construction, setup, operation, and one essential modification I had to do to get it working right. It wasn't quite on the scale of the Hubble modification, but it was a modification that had to be done nonetheless. And I wouldn't be surprised if anyone watching this who's contemplating doing a project like this or has already done it will have had to contemplate overcoming the same problem as I did. And then I'll be spending time showing you what it can actually do for you. I'm not going to go through all of these, but there's a whole heap of interesting stuff like stars and satellites, even resolving UFO queries. So I'm going to start now. Here we go. So why build an all-sky camera at all? Well, the main aim is that it can capture images of the entire sky. You can set it to do it at predetermined intervals, whether they be 10 seconds, 30 seconds, a minute, it's up to yourself. You can do it all throughout the night. You can also do it during the day, but through the night is what I'm really looking for. I wanted it to be automatic and remote operation. I was certainly not wanting to sit in a wee hut and be pushing a return button every 40 seconds. It can be webcast. You can make it available to anyone or just select audiences. So if you've got, for example, a Perseid meteor shower, you can webcast it and open it up worldwide to anyone. It's actually useful for keeping an eye in the sky. You know, while you're doing other things in the house or whatever outside, you just pop in and you can see if there's an aurora developing or a meteor shower developing or whatever. It's extremely useful for us up here because, as I said, we do get wonderful northern lights up here at the moment. And you can check the aurora alerts that ping on your phone, and you can have a look and see whether it really is worth going outside or traveling somewhere in your car to set up your camera equipment and go and take some aurora shots. It's very good for learning your constellations, your asterisms, your planets, where they are in relation to each other. Just learning, getting the hang of the movement of the night sky relative to your position. It really does give a good insight into how often and at what times the occurrence of meteors, fireballs, very bright satellites. The ISS is a fantastic subject, of course, and depending where you are, I mean, we get quite a bit of air traffic activity up here, both military and commercial, and rescue. So that's quite interesting to look at. And of course, you can't avoid seeing and getting into cloud development and the movement of it. Light pollution, you see. There's actually now, it's visible air pollution, I have noticed. And this is a new problem to me. We've all been encouraged to go on to solid fuel burners, get rid of our oil, get rid of our gas, get rid of our coal, and go into solid fuel burners. And it's great. I mean, it's obviously helping the environment in general, but it does cause a problem on these still nights where the fine smoke, not necessarily dangerous smoke, just fine smoke, it hangs and it creates a media for light, basically, to reflect off. So there's a little byproduct of something we're trying to do, and it's creating another little problem. Cost, I had a big decision to make: buy versus build. At the time I was doing it, there certainly weren't many systems available to buy off the shelf. There was bits of individual kit you could buy, but not a whole system. And again, at the time I was looking at this, it was going to cost, I think the cheapest was about £850, and it could cost £1,500 or more. And they could be very limited in what they could do. You know, they weren't as bespoke as designing or adapting something for yourself. Why did I actually decide to do it? Well, in October 2020, I actually got totally fed up with the COVID restrictions. It was the classic where in the spring and the summer, lockdown was not a problem. But as the weather got bad, as the days got short, I was definitely starting to go stir crazy, and I needed something to do. I've always liked to challenge myself. And this seemed like another good idea, and it was different. It was challenging from both, you know, an intellectual and a practical way. So I really liked that. I had thought of it over a few years, but I'd never, you know, just never got around to it, the old classic. And then I genuinely randomly came across a website, and it just fanned those embers that was in my mind and got them going, and it got me excited. The other thing is, more and more I read about it, I went, this is actually doable. I think I'm pretty sure I can do this. And you know, okay, not everyone necessarily can do it. You have to have basic, competent technical and construction skills, bit of confidence, access to YouTube, and you know, be able to you know, wade through some of the people that have done it themselves and they want to help. You know, they've documented what they've done. You have to have the ability to set up a Raspberry Pi or equivalent computer and install its operating system, and also the All Sky operating code. And this is where I'll explain a bit later, but you definitely need a basic knowledge of coding, or someone who can code for you on your behalf, for example, a secondary school student, because you do need to refine the All Sky operating code for your own particular setup. I was also confident that I could incorporate my recently acquired 3D printing and design skills. I guess another thing I took up since I've retired, Nick, was 3D printing, and it's turned out to be a fantastic thing. It just absolutely meshes with astronomy, photography, and astrophotography. So I thought I can incorporate certain bits of it into there, and you'll see that as I go through the construct here. This was the fella I have to thank, Canadian fella, Thomas Jacquin. He did the project. This is the website. This is the project I found. I'm not going to go through all the web links, but again, if you go back to the recording of this talk, you will find all these pieces. They're all necessary, but he really did document it awfully well. And again, he gave me the confidence that I could have a go at this. What did I need to build it? I needed all this equipment. I'm not going to go through it because I've in my opinion, a picture paints 1,000 words, and I've taken photographs of it, and I'll take you through all these bits of kit as I'm as going through. So here we go. I had, believe it or not, I had a spare ZWO planetary camera, which I thought, oh, I can use this as the camera. That was fortunate. I know now that there are RPi HQ cameras, which are now being much more often used, and I know they're available from firms that are actually based in the UK, so they might be worth looking at. So I needed the camera, I needed a Raspberry Pi, and it had to be better than this. At least this, it had to be at least this level, this model, 3B plus. I don't know what model they're on to now, but this one certainly works perfectly well. The other thing I needed was a 1.5mm wide angle lens. Now this ZWO camera came with a wide angle lens, but not wide enough for my purposes. So I bought this separately. Now I think this particular one, I don't think it's made anymore. And I noticed when I was on Facebook earlier, All Sky Optics Limited, they were commenting, he was, I think the fella's on that runs the company, and he might be able to help me out to see whether are there alternative lenses available that would do this. So that if perhaps you consider giving me a wee answer to that, that would be useful, because you do need a very, very wide angle lens to make this effective. I've put here, you don't need the wireless mouse USB stick in the back of the Raspberry Pi. That was simply me setting it all up, and I did it all wirelessly on my desk. So that comes out once you've done it. And you need the SD card for two things: one, to load the operating system, and also to capture and keep the raw image frames, because there are literally thousands and thousands and thousands of them. So you need a big SD card on there. How do I power it? How do I get it to communicate? I use a power over Ethernet splitter. That's basically, that's a combination of power coming in from a transformer, basically, and it also splits the Ethernet signal so that I can run a cable from the back of my computer in my workshop office all the way along my roof to the computer. It's faster than Wi-Fi. You can do it Wi-Fi, but all the constraints of Wi-Fi, you know, like distance or bits of building in between, come into play. So I decided to do it by cable, and I can assure you it works absolutely perfectly. You need a USB cable to connect your camera to the Raspberry Pi, and you need a mounting board to keep everything all neatly together. The power over Ethernet splitter, the Raspberry Pi on the other side, the camera, and the cable. And that mounting board, this is where my 3D printing came in. I was able to design my own board, so it all fitted neatly, and you'll see what it fits neatly into in this slide. I got an old drain, I got a bit of drain pipe with two covers. That was out of B&Q, and just cut a couple of holes in them. And you can see that I bought an optical quality acrylic dome, which wasn't very expensive at all. You just have to wait a while for it. I printed a 3D printed collar. That was just to make the hole that I cut pretty rubbishly, just to make it look a bit neater. Not that anybody sees the thing on the roof. The drain pipe, it had to be weatherproof, it had to be waterproof, and it had to be sturdy. And I just went drain pipe. They're in the ground. They can handle water and weather and pressure. So if it handles that, surely it'll be a good enough enclosure for what I want it to do. And I also printed a 3D printed an end cap for it, so I could draw in air to keep the air circulating around the whole thing. There's a few holes in here to try and keep the air circulating and stop it dewing up and things like that. So that was the idea anyway. So that's it before it got installed. Up on the roof, excuse the moss on the roof. But again, I designed a base and printed the roof mount that fits over the top of the roof there, screwed in. My mounting screws, the drain pipe with all the camera and all the power over Ethernet, the Raspberry Pi and the cable, that just fits nicely into there. And then, as I say, that just fits neatly onto the roof. You need to align the camera whichever way you want. Now, because I wanted the northern lights and I've got a good southern sky, I wanted to make sure my north-south was my best axis, so I did it for that. But wherever you live, you might have street lights or somebody's security lights that you want to avoid, and you can turn it yourself to avoid them or get the best sky for yourself anyway. I did find that I was getting glare from street lights and security lights. So again, I had to design a good old-fashioned lens hood and 3D printed that as well. So the 3D printing that I thought was going to be useful actually became essential. I know I could have made these out of other materials, but you know, if you've bought a 3D printer, you may as well use it. But that works extremely well, and it really does shade the camera and everything from bad artificial light glare. So the construction of it, I personally found okay, because I'm good with my hands. I'm good at design and a wee bit of engineering. I'm okay. The coding, the setup, and the operation was another story. I found this very tricky in actual fact. So I installed Thomas Jacquin's open source software, which was available via the GitHub links as I showed you earlier. That enabled the images. It could be taken 24/7 and it can display them live. I got to that bit okay. You can use you can adjust the key parameters. There's exposure time, game, red, blue balance. Anybody that does astrophotography will know exactly what all this is. The fundamentals of getting your image roughly right. You can also set it up to automatically save the images. It saves the nighttime by default, but you can also do it for daytime. I have tried daytime saving, but if you want to use up your SD card memory, that's what happens. So I don't save the daytime anymore unless there is something particularly exciting going on. You can transfer your stored images to your website. You can do that for the SD card, and you can do that automatically. And it automatically produces time-lapse images, star trail images, and a kilogram, which I didn't know what that was until I got into this. But that's a very useful little sky splitting image. What I found really tricky was modifying the code for my own location and setup. And especially for uploading the data and images to my own website. You have to bear in mind that, you know, although I got university degrees and things like that, they were many, many, many years ago. And I found out that coding is completely different to computer programming in BASIC and COBOL and NIGO and Fortran. It's a whole heap. It's more like machine code. And I probably could have worked my way to learn it, but it was so difficult. So there was a user forum, or there are user forums on GitHub, and they help. They really do help. But sometimes it can take a bit of time for when you request a bit of help for someone to come along to attend to the problem that you've presented. I actually got in touch directly with Thomas in Canada. Just what I do, I just can't sit in my hands, so I just contacted him and give him credit. He helped me quickly and directly, and I was up and running. Thomas now has a helper. He has a guy called Eric Cleese, and he seems to attend to the user forums and help people with their issues very quickly nowadays. But as I said, if you know of a secondary school student or a college or university student that is able to solve these coding issues, I'm sure they could. The coding issues, I am positive, are not difficult. They're difficult to me, but I'm sure they're not difficult to a young person anymore. So get yourself secondary school student that can do a bit of coding, and I'm sure you'll be cooking on gas. The user interface that you operate the system with, this is pretty typical of it. I wouldn't say it was particularly doesn't look great, but it is actually very functional. And once you get the hang of it, it's pretty easy to use. You go into the camera settings and you choose your exposure settings, and you know, you just how many milliseconds do you want it? Do you want it to be auto? There's all your gamma and brightness and red balances, which I say astrophotographers will be quite happy with. But to be honest with you, this is trial and error. You actually muck about with these numbers, and your camera and your skies will determine what your final settings are. So it doesn't look great, but it is actually very versatile. I actually believe this user interface has been made better, but I haven't got the guts to change it at the moment. I might have a go in the summer, but this thing's been working now for what, a year and a quarter, and I'm loath to take the risk of clearing all the coding out and starting from scratch. This is another thing you have to go through. I'm not going to go through it all, but you have to just understand what these things mean, and you know, do you want it to work true, or do you not want? Do you want it to keep it, switch it off, false, or these things? How many frames per second do you want your time lapse to be when you get up in the morning and have a look at what happened last night? I'm not going to go through the detail of it, just to say that these are all the things you can and need to attend to during the setup. I find this screen actually really useful, because this tells me how much memory of my Raspberry Pi is being used, what's the loading on the processing unit. The important one here, the processing unit temperature. So the Raspberry Pi temperature, not a problem in the winter. In the summer up here, because it's on the roof, it's in direct sunlight. If that gets over, say, 60, 65 degrees C in a Raspberry Pi, now it doesn't damage it, but it slows the performance down. Raspberry Pi automatically slows its processing rate down so it doesn't generate any more heat. So it can be a bit cumbersome, a bit blocky if the temperature goes high. And then, of course, I want to just check that my SD card's still got plenty of memory. So this is really useful. The temperature, I say, especially. And I also monitor the temperature of the camera sensor. And between the two, I know whether my system is cooling properly. This part of the user interface I use all the time. I use it almost every day, every other day, because if I see that you know, I've had a decent it's been a decent sky, I like to go in and I like to have a look at sometimes the individual frames. I might notice on my time lapse that there's something really bright has suddenly appeared at 2:20 roughly in the morning. And I go into the individual frames and I can see whether it was a fireball or a flaring satellite or an aircraft or whatever it was. So this is how you can get into the individual frames. So very useful. And what everybody wants to know is, how much did it really cost you then? Well, these are all the elements that I needed to get it going. The biggest element, the biggest cost will. Hi Nick, I lost you there. Yeah, my internet went down.
Okay, we thought that's one. Yeah. That is one of the problems with Zoom and stuff. But are you okay now?
Yeah. Now I don't know how far, but I don't know where I got to and it kicked out. But
so you were just talking about the construction prices. You got.
Oh yeah, that's fine. That's cool.
You got to mention the camera, and you froze at that point.
That's good. That's fine. That's not difficult then.
Somebody's just commented on the chat that hopefully the gales haven't blown down your phone.
Yeah, I don't actually have any gales, but it doesn't mean that the wherever my internet service provider is hasn't got them.
Okay, yeah, this is where we were. So
excellent. Right, so the camera was about 50% of the cost. The Raspberry Pi wasn't very much at all. I've got an onboard cooling fan, which I'm going to take you through in a second. The camera was £60, but all the rest, I mean, nothing there was what I would call excessively expensive. And I built the whole thing for just over £500, £530, which I thought was pretty reasonable. So if you're considering it, that is, I would say, a fair price. You can buy bespoke systems, and I'm sure you can buy better or poorer bits of kit, but that's entirely up to yourself. This is the essential major modification that came upon me, and I'm sure everyone's going to experience this one. After operating it for 4 months, the image had started to deteriorate. I went up on the roof, I took the thing off, and I noticed that the inside of the acrylic dome and the top of the camera, there was fine dewing, but there was significant dewing on the inside of it and on the camera surface. So the simple idea I've had of using convected heat from the processor, going through a couple of holes in the top of the drain tube thing, to prevent dew formation, that failed miserably. It's too simple, it did not work. So I had to think of a solution. And this was the solution. I saw online that you can buy an onboard Raspberry Pi cooling fan and a control board. It's all part of the thing. And you just fit it onto the back of the Raspberry Pi board. And you program it to come on when the temperature gets up to a certain thing. It's all automatic. So I thought that's the solution. But how on earth do I do I fix that into my drainage tube? So I had to design an air duct. So what I do, right, the Raspberry Pi is actually sitting on this side of the mountain board. So bear in mind, so the fan's going, it's drawing cold air in by the fan over the Raspberry Pi board and processor. That gets slightly warmed up, goes through this little duct, and up there, and this goes straight into the acrylic dome and the camera, which is there, so it blows over that, removes the moving slightly warm air, removes the moisture, any moisture that's in there, and then that gets exhausted outside. So it's a simple solution, but I was quite pleased with this little design. I must have done this for engineering. So there you go, the air's drawn in, goes through this little duct up through the dome, and as I say, out with any moisture that's in the above the camera and inside the dome. And this is what it looks like now. So the mountain box now has a hole in it. So that's where the cold air is drawn in by the fan. It's very low volume, by the way. And that gets drawn in over the Raspberry Pi processor, round the inside of the dome, and then it comes out through the holes and out through the exhaust, taking any moisture away. And that has worked 100% successfully. There was a fantastic image quality improvement, and it was way better than I'd ever had. I obviously had a dewing problem probably from the get-go. I just hadn't realized it. The image was much crisper, the stars looked smaller, and I hadn't done anything with the focus. The colors were also more prominent and they were clearer. So that worked. There are many other solutions to this. People put in dew heaters. There's all kinds of things people do. That solution works for them. This solution worked for me, and I was fortunate I was able to design and 3D print the solution. So that worked. So what can the actual all-sky camera do? And this is the fun bit. Here's a kilogram. What on earth is a kilogram? Well, a kilogram is a 1 pixel slice of image from the north through the south axis of the camera. Now, in my images here, north is on the bottom and south is on the top. And this is a bit of a joke, but the normal nights at the moment, from north to south, it's a line through cloud, and it's wall-to-wall cloud from twilight at dusk to twilight to dawn, with masses of cloud in between. And that actually has been like that for quite a long time. But on a night where you want to get the scope out or the cameras out, this is what you get. So this is north at the bottom, south at the top, and you can see the 1 pixel slice, which is taken every time the camera exposes. So I have my camera set up for 40-second exposures. You can see that you've got from twilight at dusk, I've got clear skies right through till just about midnight here, bit of cloud gap. So it lets you know how your night has gone. Quite a useful thing, and I'm going to show you how you can use it to see how an Aurora, a Northern Lights night went. So that's really fascinating. Here's a single image of the all-sky camera, and I'm pretty sure you can clearly see here the Milky Way with some of the dust lanes. There's bright Jupiter. This is, in actual fact, an aurora. This is north is to the right, south is to the left, east is to the top, and west is to the bottom, and the zenith directly overhead is in the middle. So the my north horizon looks over Ben Wyvis, a big 3,700 foot Munro, and quite often get the aurora directly over there. So I've got some lovely images to show you later. The single image also lets you see here's an asterism everybody will be familiar with, the plough, the Big Dipper. You can see there, you take the pointer stars and you can run up to there. There's the pole star, and I'm going to show you a time lapse in a minute and you'll see everything apparently rotating around this spot. There's a couple of constellations. There's Cassiopeia, the W or upside down the M, depending which way you're looking at it, and the curved Y of Perseus. And in between the two, this little fuzzy area here, that is the double cluster in Perseus. So it picks that up. And in there's another constellation as well, the square of Pegasus. And we all use this, or many people use this to help us find something spectacular. So the end star of the square of Pegasus, nip up a couple up to, and you come to this other fuzzy object, and that of course is M31 or the Andromeda Galaxy. So you can see these things with this all-sky camera, certainly in this location anyway. To help you, because it's messy, you know, there's so many stars that have become visible with this. You can click when you go onto the website. There's an overlay. You just click on the zigzag of Cassiopeia here, and it toggles on or off the constellations that are actually visible in the sky at the moment, and that helps you interpret what you're looking at. And this is also good for teaching people where the constellations are relative to each other. These other menu items, this is where I can get the kilogram in the morning. This is, sorry, the kilogram in the morning. This is where I can get star trails. This is where I can get a time lapse. And you'll see examples of these in a minute. Right, this is a time lapse. It's very fast. I've speeded it up because it normally lasts about 2-3 minutes when I look at it in the morning. So I've speeded it up just to show you what you get. You will see the sky apparently rotating around the pole star, and you'll recognize some constellations. You'll see the Milky Way, and you might see the odd satellite whiz by. So there you go. There's the pole star. You can see the clouds as well. There's Orion on the left, clouds coming over, not unusual. There's the moon coming up, and there's a 22-degree halo, which you know, you can nip outside with your camera and take a beautiful picture of that if you see that. If you get a clear night, I mean, the star trails are wonderful. They really are beautiful, and there's a lot of actual information in here. There's your pole star. Now we all know that it doesn't rotate exactly around the pole star. It's so you get a slight curve there. But what you can see here are the different thicknesses of the lines, or the different brightnesses or magnitudes of the stars. You can pick up the different colors of some of the stars. You see these three here, all roughly the same. That's the 3 belt stars of Orion. This bright streak down the bottom here, down the south, that's Jupiter. So, you know, a lot of stuff in here. Sometimes you see great big streaks. I'll show you one of them in a wee while, and you think, oh, I wonder what that was, and you go into the images to look for it. Satellites. There's lots of satellites. It's unbelievable how many things streak across the sky of a night. Now, the very bright ones, you find them, and you can do two things. You can either plan using, for example, heavens above to try and watch them as they're happening, as they're crossing the sky. Or you can see one in your time lapse or in your images, and you go, I wonder what that one was, and you can retrospectively, you know, retrofit it and identify what it was. So quite an interesting little exercise. This one, I've got a little time lapse of the space station. I might have to play it a couple of times. It's in the southwest here. You'll see it. There it goes. There it goes again. And I've slowed it down, and you can see the space station. We can just below M42 there. I'll just do it one more time. South is on the left, so south, there it goes. There it goes. So it's fascinating to do this. It's also good. This is part of the STEM presentations we do to teach young people, you know, what is in the sky. Here's an interesting one. So this was a star trail taken the 2nd of February last week. Now, we have many aircraft go over, and they go directly over my house. And I don't know whether it's because I've got the observatory out the back and they've clipped it into their way leaves, but their waypoints rather. And here I found there's a great big bright streak, and it was the helicopter. It was a search and rescue helicopter. Went absolutely directly over the camera and over my observatory. If you look to the left here, you can see these red dots. These are navigation lights flashing from some other aircraft. But look at this, lots of little bright streaks. And many of those, they're actually flaring satellites. But there's a particular bright thing. I wonder what that was. Bright things here. That could have been a mini fireball directly overhead. But these are fascinating. So when you see this, you then go back into the individual frames, and you try and find where they are and try and identify what they are. It's good fun doing this. UFO sighting. Now, I might joke about this, but quite often our astronomy clubs, we get people that post on our Facebook pages and they say, I have seen a UFO. And people desperately want it to be a UFO. So they say, right, I saw this slow moving object, you know, in the east horizon, and I just wondered what it was. Is it a UFO? And then you get other people saying, no, it isn't, it's a satellite or something. And you can tell they don't like that answer. So this was actually very useful, because one of my colleagues, one of my friends in Sigma, the Murray Club, is an ex-RAF guy, and he knows that there are exercises regularly go on with planes. And he said to him, this is a high altitude refueling exercise that goes on over the Murray skies, and there'll be two planes at very high altitude practicing this refueling exercise. So I went into the all-sky camera frames, and I found the sequence of frames that the person was referring to, and then I zoomed in on them. So it was right, what he described was right. He did see slow-moving, bright, very slow-moving, bright streak in the east. But when you looked at it closely, it wasn't a single thing, it was two, and it tied in exactly with what my colleague said, that it was a high altitude refueling exercise. So it helped resolve a query. The person was a bit disappointed, but there you go. Meteors and fireballs, it's excellent for these. It's excellent for bright ones, but it doesn't pick up the very, very faint ones. You've got a 40-second, I have a 40-second exposure time, so you may get several in the time. If it's a satellite, you know, you'll see it in subsequent frames when it's a meteor or a fireball or bolide. It's only in one frame, but you can see this one here. I mean, this was a big bright thing. Now this is north. My big mountain Ben Wyvis is there. That, if anybody had been walking at 5:25 in the morning on the 15th of October last year, they would have seen this huge bright thing apparently crash into the top of the mountain. That would have been quite a sight to see, but picked up on the all-sky camera. And here's one just from a few days ago. This was the 11th of February. So just, what's this? 20, no, what was it? The 16th is, my goodness, Valentine's Day was only 2 days ago and I've forgotten already. So there's a very bright meteor that occurred there at 3:15 in the morning. You can see a little bit here, right? There's the moon at this side, so it's pretty bright. And you've got a bit of, or I've got a bit of lens flare or dome flare there, and a bit of reflection off my camera. Some people spend ages and ages trying to get rid of all this. I don't bother with it, because out with the bright moonlit times, I don't get a lot of reflection off the camera, and it just doesn't bother me anyway. But it bothers some people and they try and fix it. The Northern Lights. Now, Aurora, this is something that is spectacular in our part of the world. And this is an image which shows you, if you look at, this is north, very, very bright auroral glow, auroral arc here. And if you look carefully, you can see the pink rays, huge areas of pink in this particular one, dancing off the auroral arc. So this is just a single frame of this. Here's a sequence where you can see the extremely bright auroral arc. There was a bit of a moon actually that night as well, and the aurora was still strong enough to shine through it. And you can you see the dancers, the heavenly dancers dancing, and they actually, these are all about 30 seconds apart, I think, in this one. And you can see the movement. I mean, these rays were moving very fast, and they were going about halfway up the sky. This is the zenith, this is the horizon. They were going fully halfway up the sky as you look at it. So very big, bright northern lights up here at that time. I've used it to illustrate the dynamics of an aurora. This is a plot we get off the Glendale app we use. It's actually off Aurora Lapse, and it's the energy, and is it nanoteslas? I can't remember what the units are for substorm for magnetic flux, but these are the peaks of emission that you get when the substorm is starting to really send out its energy. You get these huge peaks of energy, and you can see them you'll see them on the kilogram usually, but this is a short video clip. North is to the right, remember? So what you see here is a brightening on the northern horizon, and then you'll see a bright line, and that's the auroral arc developing. And then the battery charges up, and then you get the dancers coming off it, and then it calms down again, and the battery is still pushing out the energy, but it's charging and charging and charging, and it gets brighter and it gets brighter, and until about midnight again it builds up enough that it throws out another emission, and you can see it will dance in a little while. There you go, dancing again, and inevitably, just as it gets really interesting, the proper cloud comes in, and that stops your enjoyment. Now, a few days ago, on the Thursday, the 9th of February, we had an extremely big storm. Here's a couple of diagrams off the Glendale app that I use. Here is the substorm. There was a huge emission about 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, but even at this time of year up here, it's starting to get, it's still a bit light in the evenings now. But at about 8 o'clock, 8:30 till 9, there was a big emission. Another one about 10:30, then it subsided a bit, and then there was another emission here about 2 to 4 in the morning. The other thing with this particular one was the magnetic field, the strength. It was very strong, stayed strong all night, but the orientation of it was right. Sometimes it comes in the BZ, it's just like coming in as the edge of a sheet of paper to you. But this particular one, this says it's coming in at an angle. It's like a snowplow. So it was coming in strong, it was coming in fast, and it was just knocking the energy out and creating wonderful northern lights. This is the kilogram, and this is how you use a kilogram. to see what happened. So if you can remember those graphs, at around about 7:30, 8 o'clock, 8:30, you can see these peaks. These are Aurora so this is the north, and these are the Aurora dancers nipping up into the sky. These are the slices through the north-south axis. Here's another big burst again about 10:30. Still a lot of activity, but there's another burst, 2 o'clock, 3:30 in the morning. And if you look at this little time lapse, now this starts right away. It's very fast, but you'll see you'll see the dancers right away. Look at that. I don't know if you saw that. There's another one about 10:30 at night. It builds up its strength. There you go, bang. And then it's calm. It's still active. You can still see the auroral arc. If you took a camera of that, it would be green glow. And then 2 o'clock, there you go. It's a little dancing there. So it's very interesting stuff, fascinating stuff. I don't know whether Sandra Branton comes on tonight, but I'm sure Sandra would be able to help me analyze or see what these things meant. I don't know the science totally behind it, but there's plenty of data, I think, on these images and these time lapses to do something. And there's the individual frames of that, of a section of that storm. So the very, very bright auroral arch with some of the lovely pink dancers that were coming off it. So that's from the all sky. I was actually out in my car that night, and this is looking at the Chromary Bridge. And so this is with a DSLR, and there is the green glow, and there is the pink dancers. That pink was actually, to my eyes, that pink was visible. That one was slightly visible. I couldn't see the pink with that, but my camera's picked it up really well. There's looking much more to the Chromary Bridge. That's the headlights coming towards you and the tail lights going away. And the green glow, you can see some twists and turns in the Aurora. And of course, I went out to Port Mahomet, pretty close to where Dennis lives, and I had to do the proverbial selfie with me in the picture as I was pointing to the auroral glow. So that was that. Now, that's all the interesting astronomy stuff, but there are some other things that you get with the all-sky camera. Up this part of the world, you get unexpected visitors, beasties, and they are, especially in the summer, you get masses of these. So this kind of beastie, we had Henrietta the spider. She was with us for months, and it turned out that she was actually living inside the all-sky camera assembly. When I went to maintain it just before the autumn there, I found her remains there, and I made sure I blocked everything up, so hopefully I don't get any more Henriettas. But the most interesting one was when we were doing the live Perseid watch, and I went through the individual frames, and here in the southeast was my cat Marty taking a selfie on the all-sky camera. And one of the wits in our club has christened this the Cat's Head Nebula. So there's all kinds of things this all-sky camera is capable of doing. So that's it. If you want to know anything else, I saw there was questions flashing in on the chat there. So if there's anything else you want to know, please fire them to me. Thank you very much for watching. I certainly enjoyed doing that. So hopefully you've got something for me.
That's great. Thank you very much, Eric. And it is amazing when you have a camera like this looking at the sky, just how much is going on up there that we don't normally see.
Yeah.
And as you say, there's kind of flashes from satellites, all kinds of weird things going on.
Well, the thing is, Nick, you can do it when you're sleeping.
Yeah, that's true.
You know how nocturnal this pastime can be sometimes.
Absolutely. So yeah, there are a few questions coming up. I'd just like to ask a couple myself before we start, and if people can then put questions on the various chats, and I'll feed them in. So I've got a couple of questions. One of them's relating to the 3D printing. More and more people seem to be doing that these days, and particularly to kind of make special bits and pieces for their equipment. Can you just say a little bit about what the printer is you've got and how straightforward it is to do?
Yeah, mine is.
People start really.
Yeah, well, I'd never done anything like this. I'm a biochemist by degree. I'm not an engineer, but I've obviously wired in the right enough way. and a guy called Bill Leslie from Sigma Club in Murray put me onto this, and it's an Ender 3. So one of these, a very affordable, is it a 275 by 275 bait, so you can build a reasonable size things on it. It's also capable of doing fine things. There was a big discussion when I first got it. Can you do fine threads? Will they be strong enough? Can you do plastics? Can you print with plastics that are stronger? Rather than the PLA that the basic plastic. Can you use PETG, which is stronger and a bit more flexible, or ABS Lego brick plastic? And you can with that one. That's about as high as you can go, but that's sturdy, that's strong. Yes, you can do fine things. One of the things I've done is I can do very fine astronomical threads, and anybody that does astronomy, photography, astrophotography knows that a standard M42 thread is anything but. There is M42 Joe blogs, there's M40, they're all slightly different, because the manufacturers have geared it such that when you buy their bit of kit, you buy their adapter. So I learned how to overcome that. So yes, I do things like solar filter frame. Oh, handy. I think actually Altair, I'm pretty sure Altair Astro will be on there. They do 3D printing in their business, and for they do it commercially. And it's nice to see that a firm can actually do it for themselves and make a bit of money out of it. I just do it entirely for myself or for the club,
Yeah. But yeah, it certainly seems to be something that's catching on, I think, amongst a lot of astro hobbyists now.
You do have to be aware of certain, how to print and how to design, because you're sticking kit, of several hundred, several £1,000s on a little, 2.5-inch adapter. You do not want it falling off. So yeah.
Okay. Okay, I've got a few more questions. So if we just run through the questions, one from Kevin Kell from earlier on. He said that on one of the slides it showed that the sensor temperature was 35 Celsius, which is quite warm. Do you actually do any dark frames to keep the images clean, or is that just as it comes?
Good question. That is absolutely. I do. She's absolutely right. 35 is fine. It's not difficult, but yes, when you're setting up the camera system, there is in the interface a menu to do a dark frame calibration range, and I did that in the house, and I did it. I stuck my camera in an old developer's bag. So this is me going back years. I've still got the thing. Stuck it in a bag, stuck it in the fridge, took it. In fact, I stuck it in the freezer and took it down to something like -10, and then allowed it to gradually heat up. And every degree, it takes a dark frame. And then I stuck it eventually on the top of my radiator to get a few more warm dark frames. So yes, Helen, you do, because if you don't, the noise is horrendous. So yes, you do that.
And does the software that you use manage that automatically? Does it?
Yeah, that's Thomas Jacquin's operating software. Does that automatic? It's in there. You have to, you do it. They tell you before you stick it up on your roof, do the dark frames, then stick it up on your roof. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So we had a comment from Jason McDonald, who you know from All Sky Optics, talking about the lens that you said that you couldn't get any more, the Aricon Vision 1.55mm lens. He says he thinks there's a Tacina equivalent which he's managed to get on order at the moment. So he'll know fairly soon whether that actually covers the chip area and is suitable for these cameras.
That's cool, because it's like, you get a wide angle 155 and you go, oh, I wonder if I could get a 1.4, or
Yeah. Do you know what the f ratio of that lens is?
Oh goodness, no, I don't.
No,
and
okay.
I should have done that.
No worries. Darrell Dobbs asks, you mentioned that you had problem with condensation and that you arranged the fan and the blower to overcome that. He says, do you have any problem with frost on the dome during the winter?
No, and that was something that was concerning, because up here I not regularly, I often we get -5, -8, -10, and and it arrives quickly. The way we get the classic, the humid night, and then the dew just drops out of the air as it does in the whole of the UK. It just drops out, and then it freezes quick. So I was concerned. No, the heat that's in the Raspberry Pi processor and comes from obviously the sensor as well seems to be enough to stop any frost. Where I do have a problem is if it snows. If it snows heavy, I'm afraid it does take a while to thaw that out. There's nothing you can do with that. Yeah. And I'm not going up there with a brush.
Send the cat up.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea.
So Andy Washington asked a kind of related question. On various of the pictures you showed, there were water droplets, which I guess were left over from rain showers, and whatever. They must cause optical distortions, I guess, for a while. And how long do they usually last for before they go?
Now I tried in the beginning. I got some of that stuff that you put on car windscreens. I can't remember what it's called. That you don't use a windscreen.
It stops water beading.
And it does work. It works pretty well, but it doesn't last forever. And again, once it wears off, I think it depends where you're located at. I've got mine right up on the top of my roof because it's the best, widest area of sky I get. But I'm not going up there to do it all the time. That's a good question. If it's windy, it doesn't last very long at all. And it's often windy in the UK. But there are nights where you can you watch the time lapse in the morning and you see the droplet just slowly shrinking. I've got good air up here. I don't have we don't have particulate kind of nasty air, so I don't get residue remaining on it. But they can last for a while, and yes, you get distortions. And again, at first I went, I wanted this to be all perfect, and then I went, stop. It's not a scientific instrument as such. My career doesn't depend on it. It's enjoyable and be real.
And in fact, the rain is useful because it cleans off any other stuff that might be on the dome.
It's probably like these self-cleaning windows that you get in big modern buildings now, Nick.
Yeah. Question from Brian G. Again, back to the 3D printing. So if anyone wanted to build one of these themselves, can you make the 3D design files available so that people can actually 3D print the stuff themselves?
I certainly could. I'm sure a little donation to Highlands Astronomical Society would be fine. But of course I could.
Okay, that would be that'd be good. And I'm sure a lot of people after seeing this will be interested in trying to do something similar.
I've seen board. Because I have a 3D printer, you know how if you have something you tend to use it. I'm sure people are good with fret saws and plywood and other plastic sheeting and all kinds of waste packaging that they could, I'm sure there's other ways of skinning that cat, so to speak. Well, not my cat, but
True. But I do think, there's so many times that you feel like you want a little widget, and 3D printing is obviously the answer to all of those little widget problems, isn't it? That you can.
It is actually very useful because I have to say that when you get that skill of 3D printing, it is a truly useful tool.
You probably find all sorts of applications you never thought that you'd have for it.
The other one is, the suppliers in this country are really, really good, but sometimes you want something that's just a millimeter thicker, or it's got a little lug on it or a hole in it. You can print that. So it can be very bespoke.
That's good. So I'd not heard of kilograms before your talk. So I've been educated. That's really good. And there are a couple of questions here. So Andy Washington again says, on apparently the second kilogram you showed, there was a white line on it. Do you remember what it was?
That was just, there was there's a little line, seems to appears at certain times, and it goes right through. It's about halfway between the north and south. So it's halfway along. And I haven't quite worked out what that is. And it's there on many of them, but not all of them. And it's not along the whole timeline. So I don't actually know exactly what it is. I wonder if how you saw there was some like lens flare. And it's possibly that. I reckon if I went back and had a look, I would, because all I need to do is look through the north-south axis of whichever image it is, and the time it is, and I would probably see it. I think there's lens flare, and some of them have got little teardrop shapes and tails on them. So it might be that. It's only 1 pixel wide. You see that cut?
Yeah.
You know, so could be
No,
that.
it's fascinating. As I say, I've not heard of them before, but they look like a really quick way of summarizing a night.
Yeah, well, they're used at the professional, you know, the proper Aurora studiers, you know, the institutes in Norway, and that they use them to, you know, measure things, intensities and times and colors and all kinds of spectrum and all that. So they're very useful tools. But I find them I find them interesting from an amateur point of view.
So Tony Abbey here said he's made a kilogram of kilograms, which I guess is kind of like. He says it looks more like a tartan, but I'm not sure which kind of tartan. But sounds like an interesting one.
I'd like to see that actually. If you can make that.
Yeah,
available.
Tony. So
I'd love to see that. I get what he's trying to do. That'd be good. Yeah.
Yeah. So Tony, if you get a chance to post that somewhere, either maybe on the BAA members page or wherever, I think we'd all like to see that. That would be quite interesting.
Yeah, it'll probably give us a weather link of what it's been. You know, how much cloud has there been?
Yeah,
what it'll tell us.
So I guess it's kind of all through the night, and then all the nights up the other way. So that's really interesting. He says he's going to send a link through, so that'll be good. I did actually a few years ago make an all-sky camera, and one of the things I found most difficult to find was a really decent dome for it. So where did you get yours from? Was that from?
I think my first one I got was off Amazon, and I can't for the life of me remember. It took a long while to come.
And it's just
I actually think it came from America, although I bought it through a British distributor. I am pretty sure when I'll check back on the invoice and the dispatch records that come with these things, I think it came from a place in America. Because when I went back on to buy a replacement or a spare, which I've got and never used, but I went directly to an American firm and everything looked the same as had come through there. So I got it on Amazon.
Is it a polycarbonate one or is it glass?
It's polycarbonate.
And
so again, you need to be, when it's up on the roof, it's fine, but when you're working with it, you've got to be really careful with it. Any dust or anything, keep sandpaper away from it. You know how easy that stuff is to scratch. It's awful.
Do you have to get particular ones that are not susceptible to UV sunlight and kind of?
It said. I'm pretty sure it said that on the spec because I think they were used. They're used for security cameras.
Yeah. Okay.
So nobody's going to want to put one of them high up a building and have to replace it.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think it's really interesting, and the more people we can get to put up these cameras, the better, really, because there's just so much stuff going on.
Yeah.
All the way from kind of fireballs and meteors to satellites, and with all the Starlink stuff at the moment, we just recently had a lot of Starlink satellites re-entering.
Well, like I say, I get some, when they've been freshly launched, I sometimes get a whole series of streaks.
Yeah.
But once they settle into whatever orbit, then I think this seems to be a bit more southerly than where I am. I'm 57.5 degrees north.
Yeah, they're mainly, I think, 52, 53 degrees, something like that.
Aye, so where are you, Dick? What latitude are you?
I'm 5140.
Oh, right, you'll get them then.
Really southerly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Depends how bright they are. I mean, they might not show up in an all sky long, exposure thing. But if you're into astrophotography, they could be a pain. It's not going to stop. It's just that the algorithm's going to have to work hard on its sigma calculations. So yeah,
they certainly are a lot. So I think that's been really good. Thank you very much. I've got one final question here from John Axtell, which is actually quite close to my heart as well. It's not an astronomical question, but you can possibly guess what it might be. He says, given Eric's career, what malt would he recommend to astronomers for cold night observing? And I know it's a very personal question, really.
It is a very personal question because I've worked and managed many distilleries in my career, but I have to say one of my favourites, I have a sweet tooth. I like a bit of vanilla, the American cream soda, and I like sherry and a fairly light spirit base, and I'd have to say it's a Glenord 12-year-old single malt, which the distillery is 3 miles away from here.
Okay. That sounds like a really good answer from an expert. So
you've just put me in mind of one, so after this I'm just going to nip through and have one, I think, Nick.
Brilliant. Okay, well, thank you very much, Eric. Thank you for a really interesting talk, and I think hopefully that will encourage a lot of people to go down the same path and build an all-sky camera.
Yeah. Well, as I say, if there's any queries, you know, just I don't know how we accumulate them, but I'm quite happy to answer them. Not a problem.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that if anyone's got any queries, they can send them to us at the BAA, and we'll forward them on to you and make sure that we get them put up. So yeah, that was really, really fascinating. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah. So where are we? So the next webinar is actually the Deep Sky section annual webinar that's coming up on March the 5th on Saturday. And then our next Wednesday webinar is the history of silvering telescope mirrors, which sounds a very interesting subject, on Wednesday, March the 16th. And then at the end of March, we have our BAA meeting, which is going to be a face-to-face meeting, hopefully, currently scheduled to be at the Institute of Physics in London on the evening of Wednesday, March the 30th. So thank you, everyone. I hope you've enjoyed watching this webinar, and see you all soon.